The Weightless Princess. A long, long time ago, there lived a king and queen who longed for a child. And after years, they were blessed with the most beautiful little princess one has ever seen. The entire kingdom erupted in jubilation, and the king himself wrote out the invitations, inviting everyone he considered important, friends and family, priests and wizards, for the child's naming ceremony. But the king forgot one name, a witch, the most powerful of them all, the most evil of them all. When the witch heard of the celebrations, she decided to go to the ceremony anyway. The king was not the least bit surprised to see her there, for he had no idea that he had forgotten to send her an invitation.
Welcome. Do give a good blessing to my daughter.
Most certainly, Your Highness. Where is the little angel?
Her mother will bring her soon.
Even though it was clear that the king had meant no harm and had genuinely forgotten her, the fact made the witch even more furious, and she vowed revenge. So when the naming ceremony was to begin, and scented water was to be sprayed on the princess, the witch secretly put a magic powder in the water. As soon as it was sprinkled on the baby lost all her weight. She ceased to be affected by gravity. The nurse who held her suddenly felt as though the princess was not in her arms, as the princess had become of zero weight. What is this? What just happened? In a fright, the nurse let go of the baby, but the princess did not fall. She remained hung in the air.
My daughter! What has just happened?
It could only mean that the princess has been bewitched.
They retrieved the child, but while it may seem to mean nothing at all that someone has no weight, it created so many problems for the princess and her parents. One day, as the princess lay in bed, the queen unknowingly opened the window and left. A gush of wind came into the room, and as it would carry a feather or a grain of sand, it carried the poor baby out of the room through the window. The nurse came in and saw that the princess was not there. Where is the child? The queen may have carried her away. Where is the princess, nurse? I so want to look at my gorgeous daughter. Forgive me, Your Highness, but I thought the princess was with you. What nonsense! But then, where is she? And a great search was launched in the palace. The gardener was raking up leaves from the garden until he heard laughter coming from under a pile of leaves.
Whoa. What is that? For goodness sake, it is the princess!
Where is my daughter? Your Highness, the gardener found her under a pile of leaves.
From that day, the king and queen got so scared that they would keep the princess under watch every moment of the day. If she were sleeping, her covers were tucked tightly around her bed, such that she could scarcely move. If she were awake, she would always be in someone's arms. Once the king tried to fling her in the air and play with her, as strong fathers generally do, but the princess never came down, and she had to be fetched down with the use of a ladder. When the princess grew up, she could barely walk, for the moment she put her foot down, even with the slightest force, she would bound into the air. Hence, she had to be almost carried while walking. and had a train of 20 servants holding long tassels flowing off her dresses so that she would not fly off. No weight meant that even the princess's heart could never be heavy, so she could never express sadness, and all she ever did when she was not talking was to laugh. And when we cannot be sad ourselves, we cannot understand the sadness of others. And if we cannot understand the sadness of others, we can neither be kind, nor can we know what it means to love. So the princess was rude and unkind.
Child, we are so worried about you.
You look so funny when you say that. Sweetheart, don't you care about us? Don't you love us even a bit? What do you mean by caring and loving? I am fine flying around. You look so funny when you make cranky faces like that. Now, if you will excuse me, I shall leave. But the princess was sad, even though her lack of weight never let her feel it. She hated being waited upon all the time. Can't you all leave me alone?
We are sorry, Your Highness, but we have strict instructions from the king himself to keep an eye on you, lest a gust of wind carries you with it.
Please, I feel like an animal on a leash. Let go of me.
We are sorry, Your Highness, but their Majesties, the King and Queen, are very worried that you shall be carried off by the breeze and that you might be hurt.
The princess felt like a prisoner. How she longed to be left alone. There was only one place where she felt alive and free. The palace overlooked a grand lake. The princess would swim in it every day. It was only here that there was no danger of the wind carrying her off, or her stepping too hard so as to bound off flying. So while she was in the waters of the lake, she could be safely let alone. As the princess thought of it, she could be set free in the lake. So she would swim in it every day and night. Meanwhile, the king and queen were consulting every physician, doctor, metaphysicist, wizard in the kingdom. But none could offer them a solution for their poor daughter. Until one day, their scholars Humdrum and Copykeck came to the king.
Your Highness, we may have a solution to the princess's lack of gravity and weight.
Tell me, quick!
Well, as we all know, water seems to cure the princess of her weightlessness, at least temporarily. That is for as long as she is in the water.
We all know that. So?
If water that flows outside of the princess's body can cure her and delight her heart temporarily, then water flowing from within her heart might cure her permanently.
I do not understand.
Your Majesty, we must get the princess to cry. That might cure her of her weightlessness.
So, the king announced all over his kingdom that the one who made the princess cry would be rewarded. So many men and women did try, but none could make the princess shed even a tear. That is so funny! Everyone was fast losing hope of ever making the princess well again. It so happened that one day a prince was passing by the forests surrounding the kingdom. He had heard of the bewitched princess, but he harbored no desire to meet her. Hence, when night came, instead of seeking shelter in the palace as a guest, he found a cave in the forest and decided to spend the night there. As he came out into the forest to gather some dry wood for a fire, he saw someone bobbing in the lake below, and he thought the person was drowning. So he lunged into the water to save them. Of course, it was the princess, and the moment he held her and felt her weightlessness, He knew she was the bewitched princess he had never wanted to meet. But now it was too late, for the moment he had laid eyes on her, he had fallen in love with her.
How dare you lift me out of the lake?
I thought you were drowning.
How ridiculous. Now come on, put me back in.
You are the princess who has no gravity. Have you ever fallen?
I cannot fall. I can only be carried by the wind and made to fly.
Then why don't you try falling with me?
So saying, the prince dived into the water with the princess in his arms. And it was indeed the most thrilling experience the princess had ever had.
How was it?
The most marvelous thing I ever knew.
So, the prince and the princess met at the lake every night and swam together. The princess was unable to love, but the prince loved her so much that he lived to hear her laugh and to see her swim happily beside him. He could live thus for the rest of his life, but destiny had other plans. The witch found out about the princess's love for the lake, and so she cast a spell on the lake to make it dry. Slowly, little by little, the lake began to die, and with it, so did the princess.
What is going to become of our daughter?
It appears as though the princess's life is tied to that of the lake. If we don't revive the lake, we shall not be able to revive her too.
One day, when the lake had almost dried up but for a few deep pools, two youth found a golden plate below a rock that read thus: "If the lake is to live for the sake of men, it must be allowed to take the life of one man. But that man must be willing to offer his life willingly. He must sit on the dry bed of the lake till the water rises up far above his head." When the king heard of this, he sent a message to every nook and corner of the kingdom. But no one came forward to give their lives to the lake. When the prince somehow heard of the king's plea deep in the forest, he proceeded at once to the palace.
Your Highness, I shall offer my life to the lake, but on one condition.
What is it?
I want the princess to be present while I die and to keep me alive till the water rises above my head. I want her to look at me and feed me biscuits so that I do not die of starvation before the water rises up.
Your condition will be fulfilled. Perhaps seeing her beloved lake fill up again might make my daughter well too.
So, the prince sat on the bed of the lake. The princess was brought in a boat. She saw the prince, but she did not acknowledge him, for she had neither love nor kindness in her heart. As the prince sat, the water slowly began to rise. Soon, it was up to his knees, and when the boat bobbed a little, the princess was delighted.
My boat is floating. The water is rising. My lake is not dying. We can swim here again. Prince, let us swim together just as we used to.
There is nothing I want more than to swim again with you, but I cannot. For I must die so that the lake might live, so that you might live.
For the first time in her life, something tugged at the princess's heart. She did not want the prince to die. As she saw the water slowly rising, first up to the prince's waist, then his chest, then his chin, then his nose as he began gasping, she could bear it no longer. She dived into the water and forcibly pulled the prince out. By the time she had brought him ashore, he had stopped breathing. The princess panicked and she cried. She cried as loud as no one had cried before. The doctors came and attended to the prince. The princess demanded that he be put in her chambers. The princess, having been unwell herself, was taken to the palace as well. and it was one long, terrible night in the royal home. The next morning, the princess awoke. The prince lay still. She saw him and shed a few tears more.
Oh, brave prince, wake up! Wake up, please, please do not die!
As this, the prince opened his eyes and smiled. Overjoyed, the princess got out of bed, stamped her foot hard in delight, expecting to fly for joy, but she fell instead.
Ouch! Princess, you did not fly, you fell!
Yes, I see that. You have got your gravity back. There was such rejoicing in the palace that the world had never seen before. The lake was full to the brim. The prince was alive and well, and the princess had got her gravity. She did have to learn to walk. But before long, all was well with her. The prince and the princess were in love. They were married and swimming and walking and ruling their land together, and they lived happily ever after.